It's 8 o'clock, so we will open the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Sherburne County EDA. First item of business, we do have a addition to our agenda today, so I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda and add number 8.
So moved.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And then I'd ask for a motion to approve the entire agenda for February 15th. As amended. Laura's in. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed. Approval of the January 25th County EDA meeting minutes.
I'll move.
Fran,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed. All right, brings us to number 4, which is the Greater MSP Land Tour Recap.
So it looks like Greater MSP is happening on right now. Can you hear us, Morgan?
I can. Good morning. Sorry, I was having some weird issues this morning.
Good deal. Well, we're all ready for you.
I believe Amanda has a presentation, but I don't see her on yet.
Okay.
We can give a little background. We toured back in October 1st?
31st.
31st. We toured all the industrial sites countywide. Vision Bus actually donated a bus for us, so we drove around the entire county on the loop and spent about 5 hours on the bus. And then Greater MSP took notes, and today they're presenting a report on what they found, strengths and weaknesses, and what they recommend going forward.
Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
We're just giving a little background to the EDA on the land tour. And you're all teed up if you're ready to go.
Awesome. Sorry, it took me there a couple minutes to jump on. Let's see. I see Morgan and Callie. Maybe we'll start just with some quick intros if you haven't done that already.
Perfect.
Great. So this is Amanda Taylor, Greater MSP. I'm vice president of our business investment platform, which is our work at Greater MSP dedicated to supporting business growth in the region. And that shows up often as helping companies through the process of identifying options for their growth and helping existing companies expand in the region and making sure that they stay here to do that, and then attracting and recruiting new business to the region. And I've got a great team that is here to do that work and works really closely with cities and counties in the state of Minnesota to do that work. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Morgan, why don't you go first, and then Callie?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Morgan Hill, Director of Business Investments.
My name's Callie Judd, and I'm also Director of Business Investment. And I've been on the team. It'll be a year in about a month. Awesome. All right, Dan, I've got some slides I can pop up if that works for folks.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, good. And then, I've got a few maps as we're talking about some of the sites, but you just let me know if I should toggle over like a Google map if that's helpful. I can do that too. All right, one moment. It's telling me it's thinking here. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Thanks. Do you see like the presenter's view or the real view?
We see the real view.
Okay, you never
I can
know.
also see. I can see the real view too. You're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so glad y'all had a little bit of setup. We had a great visit with Dan and Jessica and cities back in I think that was like Halloween, or was it the day before Halloween? We were there in October. So really nice day to be out. I think it was a little breezy that day, but we had a good day out in a mini bus visiting sites. And what we've done is prepared a report for you, and that was included in your packet. So hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. I'm going to walk through a little bit of what's kind of higher level stuff that's going on at Greater MSP to help give some context about why this is really important and why we do this. And then share out some observations and recommendations, and happy to, chat as long as y'all would like around these recommendations and on any of the specific sites. But I just want to first thank Dan and Jessica for putting together a really great agenda, and it was really well done. Part of when we do these things too, it's an opportunity for us to get better at how we would host a company. If we were going to go do a site visit or help a company with a site visit where they're coming to the community, maybe even if they're not from the area and they're trying to, kind of get their bearings on not only specific sites, but the communities and the region. So doing things like that, like this tour, are great practice, great training as we, want to get better at doing those site visits. So it was a really great day, really well put together. Some quick kind of updates on Greater MSP as a whole, and then we'll get into those observations and recommendations. So as you guys know, Greater MSP is the regional economic development partnership for the Minneapolis-St. Paul region, of which Sherburne is part of that 15 county metro area. And, we do a lot of things across the Greater MSP partnership. And the only reason we're able to do so much, and I'm going to talk about our 2023 results in a moment, the only reason we're able to do so much is because we have active partnership and participation from our partners. So we like to call this a true working partnership. So we have investors and partners who have individuals at companies and in communities who are leading projects. And that is certainly the case for our business investment work, where when we're helping a company evaluate the region, we do it as a team. So it's the cities, it's the counties, it's the state, it's the utility providers. We work together as a team to make these investment decisions easier for companies. So when I give this message of, we are Greater MSP, I do mean you are a part of us, and we are one. And it really is real for the work that we do, that can only be done as a team. We had a big year in 2023. We just actually held our big sort of kickoff for 2024 event a couple weeks ago and celebrated a lot of the successes in 2023. And I wanted to highlight just a few for you guys, so you knew really what are the big opportunities that are in view for Minneapolis-St. Paul right now, the things that we're focused on to build the economy and build a more resilient and strong economy. And a lot of that is work at Greater MSP around what are those emerging industries that are going to be those industries for us to grow. And we're really dedicating time and attention and resources to building those opportunities. So you see at this top level outcomes, we won a Tech Hub designation in 2023. So this was a federal funding competition hosted by the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which you know well. And it was funded by the CHIPS and Science Act. And the idea was to designate the metros, the regions across the country that are leading in and will be global leaders in technology areas critical to economic and national security. So Greater MSP captained a coalition across the region with a focus on our medical technology leadership. And we won. So we were one of 31 regions that were designated tech hubs. We are the only one that is specifically focused on medical technology. There are a few others out there that are life sciences or biotech oriented or healthcare oriented, but we are the only one focused on med tech. So that's super exciting. We're working now on the submission for actual getting implementation funding. So the designation did not come with money, but now we're hoping that we can get some money from EDA to really focus on a couple of really specific things within medtech. One being workforce development, and another around business incubation in partnership with the University of Minnesota. So some really cool things happening around the Tech Hubs designation. We also, in our business investment work, you see here over $500 million of new capital investment in the region, and a little over 800 jobs that were committed through work that our team did across the metro. A lot of expansions, a lot of manufacturing expansions across the region. And across industries, but heavily focused in manufacturing. And it was a really good year for manufacturing growth, and we see that continuing into 2024. Another big thing that happened, the Minnesota Forward Fund. This is a new pot of dollars that came out of the 23 legislative session dedicated to match state funding to match federal funding for economic development projects. So this is match funding that is available for our semiconductor industry employers who are going after federal CHIPS dollars. But really, it's any company who is securing federal funding could access this pot of funds. So super exciting. We've never had anything quite like it in Minnesota. But as y'all know, it was a unique year in 23 in the legislature. So a lot of new things coming out. And then the other kind of highlight there at the top around racial inclusion, our Forge North platform, which is our startups and innovation platform, worked with partners like Generator and our venture capital partners to create a fund of funds is what they call it, to focus on investment in diverse owned and led startups. So super exciting. And it's something that, again, it's sort of like there's nothing quite like it in the country. We just, I think on Monday, there was a press release out around the first round of funding from that equity fund has been put to work. So a lot of exciting stuff there. On the industry side, so let me just give you a little bit of context on the industry side here, the work that we're doing, because the things that we're doing around industry growth and emerging technology go hand in hand with why we need sites for development that are ready for development to support this industry growth. So another big thing in 2023 was the launch of the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Hub, so the Minnesota SAF Hub. So this is, again, nothing else quite like this anywhere in the world. It's a public-private partnership, really hosted at Greater MSP, but with leadership from Delta Airlines, Ecolab, Cargill, McKinsey, Bank of America, some really big companies, with the intent of building a sustainable aviation fuel market in Minnesota. Delta wants to fill their planes at MSP with SAF. They have mandates to be filling their planes with more of it. And now we need to figure out how to produce more of it, because globally right now, the amount of sustainable fuel that is produced in a year is about the amount of fuel Delta uses in a day. So there's just simply not enough of it. So demand is off the charts. And what we're doing is working with Delta, working with a whole lot of partners across the state to figure out how to make this stuff in Minnesota. So if you know anything around sort of our history with biofuels, there's quite a lot of infrastructure and assets in the state, particularly with the ethanol kind of facilities that have been developed. We've got not only the ag-based feedstocks, but woody biomass feedstocks, so the wood products, byproducts, and lumber byproducts that can be used to create this fuel. So that work is being done through Greater MSP. Callie on this team who's here today, she's leading the deal work for SAF. So she's talking to SAF producers who are across the globe right now, looking at Minnesota to invest in Minnesota to be producing sustainable aviation fuel. And I bring this up, I highlight this because I do think this is an opportunity for Sherburne County. We, of course, are looking at feasibility across the region and really across the state. But this is something that we could explore, not just sustainable aviation fuel production, but biomanufacturing more largely is an incredible opportunity for us right now. And we're talking to a lot of folks who are looking at Minnesota and interested in Minnesota for bioindustrial manufacturing investment. I mentioned the CHIPS Act, another really great thing, exciting thing we're working on, supporting the semiconductor industry. We've got existing semiconductor fabricators who are here in the region and in the state. And then I also just mentioned the med tech work that we're doing with tech hubs. So between sustainable aviation fuel, biomanufacturing, medical device, semiconductor, these are all areas that we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of growth opportunity, where companies are going to need places to go, and we need sites that can accommodate their growth. And that's really the foundation for then why we're out across the region, really, and really intentionally in Sherburne, making sure we understand the sites that are available so that we can know about them when the projects come along, but also so that we can work with you and partner with you in figuring out how to really focus attention on sites that could be further developed and ready for investment. So I'm gonna flip over to our observations. But does anyone any questions or comments on that? Fantastic. Well, certainly stop me if anyone has a question. Oh, I did want to mention this kind of last point around global ties. We had some big global international travel. So part of what Greater MSP does is we're out promoting the region across the country, across the world. And really, because it's expensive, we do it because so that cities and counties across the metro don't feel like they have to do it, because we're out there doing it and speaking for the region. And so in 23, we were in Japan for the Midwest Japan Association conference, there with the governor, meeting with Japanese companies, and we brought some of our Japanese companies with us. And then we were in Australia in the fall with the governor's trade mission to Australia. And it was a phenomenal opportunity to be selling the great assets of Minnesota, specifically med tech space, but also in agriculture. And there was an education team and a clean tech, clean energy focus. So we came back with some really great leads from Australian companies, particularly in the medical device space. Okay. So let's get into our tour. So what I've done here is I put together, I wanted to highlight a few of the sites. I don't have every site on here that we saw, but I wanted to highlight how we observed a couple of different kinds of categories of sites that are really interesting to us. And we can go into more detail on these. And then, I want to talk through what we see really as strengths for the county, and then recommendations. So what I've done here is I've categorized sites into sort of 3 different size categories, and we saw a lot of really great opportunities across the county. I've got a couple identified as large tracts. What I would consider large is 100+ acres. These aren't like official categories, but kind of generally how they landed for us. And then mid-sized sites, 20 to 100 acres, and then small sites. And these are sites that in total may be a little bit larger, but they're really designed to be subdivided for, maybe like 3 to 10 acre sites within parks. And, the first thing you notice when you look at this map is the sites are really like well located. They're around proximity to the interstate, proximity to population, and really just like easy to get to. Also very proximate to the BNSF rail line, which is such an asset in Sherburne, something that we'll highlight here around what we consider a great strength, but also recommendations around leveraging that asset. So let me just give like the high level that we'll go into it. We can pop back to this. A couple things that stood out to us. I'll start with the small sites. First of all, just like a lot of really great industrial parks in this county. So these are mostly many publicly owned industrial parks, which is such an asset to have that. As you know, that is something that gives you a leg up on because you have some control over how that site can be made available to a company, which is great. And a lot of opportunities to be building. What we learned was a high demand kind of square footage in this 10 to 20,000 square foot range, where there's just a lot of activity in Sherburne. So nice to see a good mix of opportunities between the Industrial Park East and Big Lake, and then the Nature's Edge Business Center and Elk River, and then the Princeton Business Park up in Princeton. Each of these looked like really great options for that size kind of user who would be looking to either expand because they've grown out of their space, or to attract a new tenant to the county. In the midsize, less in this range, although I think you could treat these large tracts as also opportunities to be thinking around more subdivided mid-sized tracts for development. We highlight in Elk River the 28-acre site that also could be subdivided, and I think that is actually is that the Nature's Edge? I might be combining those in Elk River there, but in any case, that sort of like 20 to 30 acre range, we saw some good options. And then in the large tract category, this is where you have kind of a earlier stage in the development potential, but very interesting to us to see that there's some of this groundwork that's being done to consider these larger sites. That's very interesting to us because that's the category of site that we do not have much of in the metro. We are looking for opportunities to be investing and developing these sites so that we can compete for the bigger projects. And that's where the Big Lake site, which was part of the Real Impact Study, just west of town and north of Monticello there's about 1,500 acres that seemed very interesting with the BNSF rail siding. And then in Elk River, perhaps something a little bit earlier stage in development, but this opportunity nearby the Cargill Animal Nutrition Research Center, what was referred to us as the sludge land, perhaps a better marketing name for that, but seemed like a really great opportunity to put together a couple hundred acres of land potentially. And what's intriguing to us is the partnership with Cargill, or the potential for partnership with Cargill that could be explored. So let me just flip to our observations and recommendations, and we can pop back up to the maps if we want to. But I did pop in here the piece that was put together for the Rail Impact Study on the Big Lake site. I mean, this is the fact that the county and the cities work together in doing this study. Very meaningful, because now we're not just looking at raw dirt, we're looking at land that has been considered and evaluated from an engineering standpoint, certainly from a feasibility standpoint for rail service. Like that's a very big deal. That puts this kind of site in a category beyond what would be just, hey, we've got a big tract with a single owner. We know there's some complexity with that, but we would love to explore that further with y'all because it's really intriguing. Here's where we're looking at that in Elk River, the Cargill Animal Nutrition site, the sludge land, but then also I think this is the Nature's Edge Business Park over here, where there's some smaller sites that are really interesting. Can't forget this really great asset and right down the road from where you sit, and the success that the county's had in attracting and developing the data centers that currently exist. This is one of those sites that it's always nice that we can have something like this in our back pocket with different opportunities, and that it is so far along in its readiness. So I want to commend you on the investments that you've made to have this site ready and available for as an option for projects. And this is that industrial Park East, where you've got the Premier Marine that came in down here, but we're aware there's some smaller sites that can work up back in this next phase of the project. Okay, so observations. So first of all, so many great assets in Sherburne County that really position the county well for industrial growth, and that's what we're really focused on right now and looking at. And I just want to comment on the accessibility and the transportation connectivity. If you think about it from the regional perspective, the statewide perspective, great connectivity between proximity to I-94, US 10, US 169. These are really great transportation connections, and that's definitely something companies are looking at when they're looking at investment opportunities. The BNSF rail siding is if you think about it at the state, the region and state level, we do not have, well, we don't have large tracks on rail. And the fact that we've got some land here, especially land where BNSF is also, established that it's feasible that they could provide service is huge. Also, the fact that Sherburne is centered between two metro areas is an asset. You've got folks who are commuting in both directions, and so from an employer's perspective, you're looking at that and you're saying, hey, maybe I could grab some of those folks who are commuting to Minneapolis or St. Paul or Dakota County, or perhaps also draw from people who are driving up into the St. Cloud area. So that's an asset. I also want to highlight the fact that there are publicly owned industrial sites. You've made the investments. The cities have made really important investments in developing these parks, is a great asset. And Elk River, really unique. Didn't know this until we spent the day out there, of just how large the Elk River city boundaries are, given that merger with the township back in, I think it was the 70s. I looked it up. Elk River is the third largest city by land size after Minneapolis and St. Paul in the state. So what that says to us is the barrier of annexation requirements to have land with infrastructure, something that we're running into across the metro, where, hey, there's a great site, but it's in the township, and the township doesn't want to be annexed, doesn't want to annex that land. We're running into those kinds of barriers, and the fact that there could be opportunities already within the city bounds of Elk River, I think gives you a leg up in the speed and certainty that you could move in developing some of these sites. Threats, a few things. One, and this could be considered minor. I wouldn't really sit and worry about this one too hard, but the distance to MSP Airport. Oftentimes, in these competitive siting opportunities, these big projects where they're looking for large sites, we will be asked to only submit sites that are within a 45-minute drive of MSP Airport. That's not always the case, but it is pretty typical that we see something like that, and that's where Elk River is right on that 45-minute. If you get into Big Lake, you're looking at maybe up to an hour. Now, I'm sure we've got some people who drive faster and it's much shorter, but that's the kind of thing that companies and consultants are looking at. And so we'll just always want to be ready to respond. Well, you've got the St. Cloud Regional Airport, and how we describe access, especially for an international company who's thinking about, if I've got people flying in a lot, how are they going to get there? How long is it going to take there? Is it going to be difficult for them to get to the site? That's really the kind of thing, how that shows up. And then, your cost. So this is a threat, not just to Sherburne County, but to our entire region as we think about developing industrial sites. It's expensive. So I saw the numbers in the rail impact study. This is not cheap work, right? Like getting these sites ready for development, getting the infrastructure, the utilities needed to make them competitive. It costs money. And a lot of that, companies are expecting those investments are being made before they come to the table. So the cost it will take to prepare sites to be ready is not inexpensive. And so we want to take that into consideration with any new large tract development. And then finally, aligned with that is, and this is not specific to Sherburne either, but how we perceive our risk tolerance for making those kinds of advanced commitments. This is something that we deal with when we're competing with other regions of the country, where states and local municipalities and counties are making investments in infrastructure ahead of an actual user being there to occupy a site. And it's hard, right? You don't want to extend a sewer line 3 miles unless someone's going to use it. And that's certainly not what we're necessarily talking about here, but like the idea of us talking now about developing a really large site that could be competitive to attract a big investment is going to take some risk tolerance. We're going to need to make some take some risks. And I know that that can be not always easy, especially when you're talking about public funds. So another area where we would want to partner with you and think about, ways that we can help bring some certainty to any kinds of ideas around investments that would be needed to ready a site and why that's important and why it's the right kind of risk to take. Okay, so recommendations, and these come right out of the report. So one is just, further inventorying the sites that are in the region. So we've got a great starting place in what was viewed when we went on the tour. What would be the next level here, and this would be obviously not just the county, but working with the cities, is gathering and making sure we have answers to questions about utility infrastructure to those sites. So where is there water? Is there water and sewer infrastructure to the site? If not, where is it? What is it going to take to get it to the site? Working with the electric utilities to make sure we have clarity on, what is that capacity, power capacity currently that serves the site, and then what would need to happen if we needed to, get to a higher level of capacity. So some of that pre-work to be ready for when projects come along. And this is where we, certainly would want to collaborate between the county, the cities, Greater MSP, Indeed, and the utility providers to prepare this information. So it's really just getting a good inventory of those sites. The second thing, and this is responsive to what we heard on the tour around this demand around this kind of 10 to 20,000 square foot size space, is to consider a spec building. So building a speculative building that could accommodate an expanding business or be used as a recruitment tool. There's a lot of great examples across the country of cities and counties who have done this successfully, and it's been the kind of thing that has probably moved quickly, right? Because there is such demand, but it could be the kind of thing that ends up being an asset in recruiting a new business into the county. So happy to talk more about that, but I think again it's about leveraging the fact that we have these publicly owned and parks where you can be creative in how you're incentivizing locating in the parks, and building a spec building is one way to incentivize that publicly owned land. And the last recommendation here is around further feasibility and development of a large tract, we can call it a mega site, but really, a large tract development that could accommodate, one big user or a couple of big users. I think the work again that you did on the rail impact study was really foundational in examining that feasibility, and we're thrilled that you took those steps, and we would recommend and suggest further study to see how that could become a reality. And that's what I got. Happy to answer any questions or go back to any of the things that I've shared here. But before I hand it back to you all, just again wanted to thank you, the EDA, thank Dan and Jessica for putting together a great tour. We really enjoyed the time that we got to spend together.
All right, any questions for Amanda or staff?
I did have a question, Amanda. Does the Greater MSP keep track of what the available federal dollars are out there for infrastructure opportunities for improvements in kind of what you're referring to here?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because where's the money come from to do this? We're tracking right now a lot of different pots of federal funds. I'd say right now, from a site readiness standpoint, our best bet is to what we would love to do and what we've been educating on the need is for there to be a state fund to support site readiness to help cities and counties make these investments. I'm not aware of any federal pot of funding that's going to be there to do the kinds of infrastructure that is to get the site prepared. But as we're talking about like the potential for transportation improvements, like, bridge improvements, I know that's an opportunity that y'all have explored for a long time. That is where we're getting into the world of federal money. And that is something that we don't have a lot of background and experience in exploring, but we've been building really strong relationships with our federal delegation around some of these really big opportunities. And, we'd be happy to explore further with you how we can be supportive of any bridge needs. And, you start talking about big, like wastewater treatment plants and, expanding water capacity. That is where you get into the space of what could be new pots of dollars that we haven't looked at before. So the short of that is, like, I don't have any immediate ideas, but we would be happy to kind of think through it together and help identify the right kinds of partners who could help us figure it out.
Rayanne, there is some money available at the state, and we'll be talking about that at CMRP here in about 10 days. So that is an agenda item for that group.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
The one area along with that would be, that I'd be curious about is is money available around the chip manufacturers? Because I know many years ago, when I was involved with that, that was considered a strategic necessity, national defense necessity for the U.S. So I'm just wondering where that's evolved into, and if there might not, in fact, be some dollars available there to prep areas to try to bring in chip manufacturers.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So the way that the CHIPS funding is working is we can't apply for it as a community, but the companies apply for the funding directly for their expansions. So where we have existing manufacturers in the region, so for example, Polar Semiconductors in Bloomington, they've applied to expand their facility. Now they can expand it on site. They don't need to grow. They don't need a new site to do that. But if they did, they would apply, and that funding could be used for on-site improvements for a new site. I wish I could tell you we had a couple of projects right now that were new in the semiconductor space, because that could be the kind of thing where we're pointing them to some of these sites, and they would be coming with some federal dollars to help with site readiness. But we don't yet. But if there is at some point an opportunity to be using the CHIPS funding for new site development, it'll be something we know about and we would let you know about. But the semiconductor and microelectronics industry is absolutely critical here. The U.S. wants to double production of chips in the country in the next 10 years. I think it actually may be faster than 10 years. Minnesota has a concentration, not just of the fabs, but the whole value chain for chip design, chip packaging, and actual chip fabrication. And so we're actively looking for opportunities to recruit new business to the region, and that would come with federal money.
Thank you. All right, anything else?
The only thing I might add on the top one, when you say, the infrastructure availability, I think you should also consider putting fiber in there. If you're building electric, gas, water, you're more than likely you don't have that either. And I think that's a really high priority for a lot of those large companies as well. So.
Definitely, you're right. That should be there.
All right, Amanda, well, thank you so much for your time and the very useful information.
Mr. Chair, can we get a copy of what you just presented in this slide, because it's not in our packet?
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Brings us on to number 5, housing study, next step discussion. So we've had this at the table a few different times on which way to go with the housing study, either a redo or a refresh. And so if This you, Jessica, give us a brief recap, but I think you're looking for a decision today, correct?
Yeah, so in your packet, I did pull out portions of, Matt's presentation when, he let us know kind of the scope of work of a comprehensive housing needs analysis or a housing demand update, and what both of those studies included. And so, I guess we are looking for a motion on which study the EDA would like to move forward with.
And for a total redo. I think we wanna set the table and start right from fresh and get everything, we've been through COVID now, what's happened since then? The market is obviously done. I think we need a total redo,
Yeah,
personally.
I do too. I was going through, originally I was thinking the refresh, but looking through the difference between the two materials, things have changed so much. I think I'm in favor of doing a redo. I'd like to make sure if there's specific questions that we wanna have answered in the redo, rather than there's beyond what their normal, beyond what their normal format is. I think we should include that in the scope of work. I don't know what those are, but but I think that's something that would be reasonable to ask for if there's specific questions that you guys think of that you would want to have answered. But I think I'm also in favor of a redo.
So I have a question. If we had a city that was interested in chipping in some extra dollars to take a deeper dive into that city, is that something that you guys would want to consider or no?
Sure. I mean, if Elk River wanted to chip in money to cover the extra scope, why wouldn't we?
The Brent's offered 20 grand, so.
Oh, boy. That was in 2020, before inflation.
I've just had inquiries.
I got that backwards.
On the surface, I don't see any negatives to that. I think this is, as the county EDA, we are looking at it as a county. And we have, one of our goals here for the last couple of years was to become more inclusive to the township cities and be that nucleus that can help put these things together. So why have a city or anybody else reinvent the wheel?
I know the last time we did this, Becker did a deeper dive after the report and used that to kind of piggyback off of. And we've had those discussions as well.
We stay clean on this.
I know the one thing we talked about last time was getting examples of fees that each city has. We wouldn't attach names to it, it'd just be data, but I know that's something they don't always do, so we'd ask that as part of the.
Yeah, I think we would want to, I know we wouldn't want to have the names attached in the report itself. I think we would want to figure out to have access to that though. Because I think when we see that, my guess is that some of the townships and some of the cities are going to want to know where they fall, and they may know what their numbers are, but they may not know what their neighbors' numbers are. And so we may want to be able to have a specific deep dive into it, even if the names are excluded, as an appendix of some kind that we have access to.
So we would have a kickoff meeting where some of these could be vetted too, as to what we're looking for. So the first step they always have is a kickoff meeting.
I guess I kinda like what Andy said about, the way they did it last time as a total, so we're really looking at the county as a whole, and then any city can take it and piggyback off of it. That would be my only concern as to how much you're actually, making sure it's clean, I guess, is what my thought would be, but it's just.
No, reviewing this too, I would be in favor of a full redo, because I think going forward, one of the big things that stands out on here is you have a senior housing market analysis versus an inventory but no survey. And going forward, I think the analysis of the senior housing markets, the analysis of apartments, that is going to be very beneficial for developers coming in, because financial institutions are going to want this market study to finance these big projects. So we can either do it as a county and provide them with the market data, or they're gonna have to go and buy one of these market studies to prove to a financial institution that this is a viable project to finance. I mean, we know the housing demands and everything, and over the last few years, it's been common sense that you can put these apartments up, but how long before they become saturated? And if we do start to see that flip in the housing market, you know, what does that really mean for a lot of these places? So, to your point, one of the questions I would like to see too is not just a senior housing market, but also a multifamily with the apartments. You know, how many more apartments can a community work with? You know, we've got 100-some units going up now. Is there room for another 100-unit apartment complex in Becker?
And how has the housing market changed? I'm hearing more and more people are not wanting to be homeowners necessarily, but they like the townhome style or the twin home style, or are we keeping track of that? Where are we gonna be successful in
I
that
think
idea?
way back in the day, how popular, you know, townhomes were. And now they're not being built hardly at all anymore.
I think it's a good point, because I don't think we would necessarily want to limit multi-family to just apartments. Because, I mean, there's also row homes, there's also condos, all that stuff as well, so.
Yep, you've got the twin homes, you've got the patio homes, they could be detached townhomes.
Yep.
You know,
So I think that's a great point.
just finding that out, because if there are developers that come anywhere around here, if we have this and can provide this to the developers, that saves them the expense of doing that. So,
Makes us look more attractive to invest in.
and it's easier. You take one piece of you know, what a financial institution's gonna require. Because if you're dealing with the bigger companies that are financing these big builds, they may not know the area, so they're gonna force these companies to have this kind of a market study done. So if they were to go do this, that's maybe $20,000-$30,000 that they're gonna have to spend. They can just use ours.
Plus the time savings.
Yeah, the time, I mean, you're talking 6 months on this, that erases all that time.
But, and I agree, you know, another component of that is a marketing tool, if this is done and there's it's identified that Sherburne County has a huge void in whatever sector it is. That's a great marketing tool to go to these bigger companies and say, hey, we have a need for this type of housing, you know, and actually approach them with the data that might get them looking into the county where maybe they're not looking otherwise.
Yep.
Now, I will contend that most of your bigger manufacturers, housing, they know our county as well as we do, but, you know, I think we can still do our job as far as marketing.
Yeah, they do, but some of the financial institutions might not.
Right. All right, any other discussion, or if
We
not,
need
I'll
a
entertain a
motion,
motion.
Ken.
What?
You're fine. I'll just shut up, Lori.
I'll make a motion
He
to
knows what he's
approve the
doing.
total redo of the housing study.
All right, we have
A second.
motion and a second, all in favor,
Aye.
and opposed?
And then you'll get together and figure out all the details of the,
Yeah, we'll have a timeline for you by March.
All right, number 6, local housing trust fund discussion, Jessica.
So, the board, well, myself and, Health and Human Services are working on a workshop, putting together a workshop, for the board meeting on February 20th. And, we had a meeting with Bruce, and Bruce is gonna be putting, the whole framework of that presentation together, and some things, that we talked about was the statewide affordable housing aid, it's $157,000. And maybe establishing a local housing trust fund. We know that's not enough money to, you know, do a whole lot of work, but it could be seed money. And so that is something that we're looking at, or not looking at, but I will be presenting to the board on Tuesday. So, and I wanted to share too, last time we had this discussion about local housing trust fund, there was just some wondering like what can be done with a local housing trust fund. And so just as some examples I did, and this isn't going to the board yet, but just to share with the EDA as we begin to think about things that could be done with a local housing trust fund. I reached out to Washington County, Chisago County, and Swift County, and some things that they do. So Washington County has a GROW program, and they actually have a really big, active local housing trust fund that they run this program out of. And this one specifically, they focus, I'm just gonna read so I don't mess it up, but they focus on new construction developments, as most of their housing stock is relatively new. They amended their policy in 2022 to limit funding to 50% AMI and below units, and are looking at updating the policy in the next couple months to provide more per unit if restricted to the 30% AMI affordability level. So they provide gap financing loans. I'm gonna say most of their loans are between $100,000 and probably $300,000 to $400,000. They've got 8, 9 loans out right now. And so without the gap financing, those projects wouldn't have happened. So that's primarily what they use their local housing trust fund for. Chisago County, they wanted to use their funds for affordable and workforce housing. They had 6 applications, 3 tax credit projects that didn't get their tax credits, so those projects did not move forward. 2 senior housing projects that they didn't fund because they wanted to use it for workforce housing, and then a 3rd project was single-family veteran homes, and their gaps were too large, so that they did not participate in those projects. They are looking at kind of broadening maybe what they'll be using their local housing trust fund for, including preservation and updating of homes. So they may be putting in some different programs to use that funding. Not all EDA members, I'm gonna just read her little disclosure, not all of their EDA members have agreed as to what direction they're moving. Those are just some things that they're exploring. And then Swift County, HRA, EDA, they've used funds for the purchase and rehab of Grand Mar Court, which is a 16-unit rural development property. They purchased that property in December, and they're planning substantial rehabilitation this spring, and it would not have been possible without their local housing trust fund. So those are just some different things that different counties are doing, 3 very different utilizations of programming. Yeah.
Sorry, so Swift County, they combine their HRA with their EDA?
Yes.
Okay, because I know we're gonna be having that conversation as to how we're gonna be moving forward.
Yep.
On growing our HRA, besides just the annual meeting to check the boxes.
Yep.
Or the creation of CDA is another thing.
Right. Okay,
We have legislation to do such programs.
are we exploring that at the board level, or we?
Yeah, it'd be at the board level. We'll bring it up on Tuesday.
All right, thank you. Read that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. This is gonna go before the board in a workshop on Tuesday, so I just wanted to let everybody know and get your wheels turning.
Are you guys, have you been able to inventory what money is being spent on housing already in the county, like through HHS and all those things?
So yes, as part of the HHS portion of their presentation, they're gonna be identifying a lot of that.
Because one thing I would want us to consider is, let's not stick to our normal silos. If it makes sense to move that money and personnel or whatever into, as part of the trust fund, then rather than having a couple of different groups do the same thing, it'd be more efficient if we can combine it, even though it doesn't necessarily fall under our traditional silos. So something to consider.
Tuesday we're gonna show where the money comes from now,
Yeah.
what we're using it for, possibilities going forward.
Yep.
So exactly what you're asking for will hopefully be presented on Tuesday.
And then even with that 157 plus whatever, we can move in from other areas, we can still leverage more federal funds on that because of the match, right?
Yeah, so, well, I asked, the state of Minnesota has a new program. It's a local housing trust fund program. And I asked if this statewide affordable housing aid could be used as a match, because that local housing trust fund program is a match program. So whatever the county would put in, then we could apply through the state and they match it. This local housing, or the statewide affordable housing aid is not eligible for a match. And so that could be part of a local housing, this is just options, but we would, as the county level, and I don't, Dan probably would be able to identify, or the board, but additional funding that's not state or federal funding, so say we could find $150,000 of that, we could apply to the local housing trust fund for matching $150,000 and have 300. And they haven't written that program yet. It's new with the new omnibus, and so I asked for their notice of funding opportunity and the rules around that program, but it hasn't been written yet. So, but I'm subscribed to updates. So
Anything on the federal level though, that we can get?
Not that I'm aware of for a local housing trust fund.
Okay.
But I can dig deeper into that.
I just remember in the presentation, they said something to the fact that they were able to leverage $9 for every one, I think is what
At
they
the
said.
federal level?
Yeah, on that presentation, I would have sworn there was something like that mentioned in one of the slides. That's what caught my attention on it, so.
We'll dig deeper. And I think we do have some funds that could be used for the match, but we'll talk about that Tuesday of where it could come from.
Okay, I just want to maximize it.
So, anything else? Okay. So as I understand it, it's gonna go Tuesday, big presentation, commissioners, and it'll probably circle back to us for further discussion, possible implementation ideas, things like that. And then we'll just kind of keep doing this until we get some policy or procedures. Is that how everybody sees it?
A lot of this is at the board level, but they'll be looking for recommendations from this group on how, on what a priority
Yeah,
is.
everything we do is gonna go up to the board, but.
And will some of it play into the fact that, like, the county EDA does not have levy authority? But an HRA can have levy authority.
Or the board could levy it and transfer it
Right,
to
okay.
the HRA, so yeah.
All right, great. I think this one's just, information that their next meeting is February 28th at Cargill.
Yeah, that's the tour. Jared's leading a tour. Do you want give any details on
Do you have
that?
any freebies, or do we get swag?
Always, Rayanne.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, we'll just have, we'll be in one of our training rooms, everybody will come in, we'll get everybody set up, we do have a small presentation as well too, but the most important part is get everybody garbed up and we'll head out and take a look at our processes and our folks out on the plant floor is the main focus, so.
Great, look forward to that.
And that's at 3:30, so it's a little different time, kind of end the day on the 28th.
It's
So
a
it'd be
great
to have
tour. If
people.
you haven't done it, it's a great facility.
And I have to say, I'm incredibly disappointed that I'm gonna miss that.
Oh, bummer.
I know, my daughter's end of the year, 5th grade skiing field trip is that day, and I'm gonna chaperone it.
We'll think about you.
All important stuff. All right, the added item to our agenda, the Big Lake wastewater treatment plant letter of support. Big Lake's in need of expanding their wastewater treatment. They've done their preliminary work, designs, project budgeting, things like that, and into the financing stage. You correct me if I'm wrong. And so at this time, collecting any letters of support data they can to provide to all funding sources, and we're one that they would like to put into their portfolio.
I make a motion that we do the letter of support for the wastewater treatment expansion for the Big Lake plant.
You don't even want to discuss this for 10 minutes or anything?
It is needed. It's been on the table for years.
I'll second Rayanne.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right. Is there anything else? Then I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great meeting, thanks everybody.
Where's the figure at?
We're
Did I hear
early.
48 million?
Yeah, so you're,